Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of They Call Me Coach. Your host this afternoon is myself, CJ Lee, and we're welcomed by Coach Marc Steutel. Marc, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, CJ. Good to catch up. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. You're getting better looking with age.
Face of radio, some might say, mate. I'm not sure that's 100% true. So, yeah.
Well, look, Marc. Like we do every week, we try and get our guests to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their basketball history. But before you do that, I just want to remind anyone who's not kind of signed into the show before, this isn't a journalistic show. We're not trying to uncover any secrets or anything that you'd rather not discuss. So this is just a conversation. I can't imagine that there's anything that you wouldn't tell me, but you are also broadcasting it to everybody else that's listening as well. So we'll keep that in mind. Marc, I think the last time we spoke to each other was when you were still coaching at Northumbria. I think that's the last time we probably shook hands. And in that time, quite a lot has changed. Can you give us a bit of a kind of summary of your basketball journey?
Yeah, on that one, it's amazing. Coaches have selective memory, and I was gonna say it was when Jack Preston hit a last-second buzzer beater down at St Mary's with Northumbria, but it wasn't because the year after that we came down there and Solent kicked our backside. So it was. I think it was. It's amazing how coaches have selective memory. Yeah. So yeah, obviously, name's Marc Steutel, and been involved in basketball all my life. Played as a youngster, probably through to, I think probably my last year playing was about the age of 24, and played around predominantly the National League. Played a year at high school in the States. The highlight of playing was probably representing my country at under 18s. Made the England national team under 18s, which was a massive honour. And then transitioned. I probably started coaching kind of as a profession round about the age of 22, 23. Kind of community stuff first, like maybe most of us, and then progressed into kind of the academy pathway. And then since then, I spent most of my time at coaching at Team Northumbria, in which I'm still coaching at Northumbria University in the Bucks League, and obviously been involved in various different kind of regional teams, national teams, and obviously involved in the Great Britain senior men's team since 2018 as an assistant coach. And recently I've just joined Teesside Lions national NBL club. So bit of a 30-40 second snapshot there, and maybe a little bit longer. I can talk, mate, so you're going to have to rein me in a little bit. Okay.
It's all good. It's all good. The show's all about you tonight, so you can talk away. Again, like since we first met, which was I don't even remember what year it was, but I think you were possibly still studying, and we'd gone on a basketball tournament with Mark Jackson. Funnily enough, I was speaking to Mark Jackson tonight, and he did say that he was going to type some questions in, but I'm guessing that I won't be able to read any of those questions out, so I won't even go there. But but since then, you're a father, you're a husband. How have those big life kind of milestones? How have they changed you as a coach?
Um, yeah, I think being a dad's definitely put a different perspective on things. I think having my son's 4 now, so I think that's definitely given me a different perspective on everything. He's just so innocent, so pure. So kind of balancing commitments there, along with probably what most of us in the country, anyone who's involved in basketball, most of us spin multiple plates, and it does have its challenges, and you get to, I think, growing up as a player, a lot of coaches, tell you about, listen, work harder and put everything into it, and your love of the game, and and that's right. I'm not challenging any of them, but it's a certain point, particularly for maybe basketball coaches that want to make this a profession in the UK, there has to be a balance between kind of life requirements, and what you put into coaching, and I think that's why when you go through season by season, you reflect on things, and which opportunities are relevant for you at that time and which opportunities aren't, and you have to weigh everything up, and without a doubt, personal circumstances definitely impact that. So yeah, that's definitely, and I know I'm speaking to the converted with you, but I think there's definitely the reality of coaching in the UK for sure.
Excellent. Well, look, I'd like to ask because obviously there's a lot of different people listening tonight, and we'll come on to the your recent kind of job promotion appointment with Teesside Lions, but just for those people who kind of maybe don't know you as a coach, how would you describe the game of basketball through your eyes? So what are the things, if somebody was watching one of your teams, would they be able to say that's distinctly a Marc Steutel coach team because that's the way that he likes to coach or they like to play?
Um, so I guess if you're looking at my Northumbria teams, any team that wasn't 2013, 2014, I think probably would say that. And I'm not being disrespectful to the guys I had on that team, but I had talented guys, and that was my second year in Division One, and we struggled. We struggled a lot, and I was so adamant on we have to play a certain way, things that I believe in, which I will get to in a second. And we didn't have much success in terms of winning that year, and I think I learned such a lot that season from having a really challenging season. Fighting for. I want to say we got 5 or 6 wins on the year. I learned so much where I'd had 2 years previously where everything was not easy, and I felt like the teams probably had an identity that was associated with the things I believe in. So I kind of learned a lot that year about regardless of who the coach is, if you believe in basketball being played a certain way, you have to have the personnel to be able to do it. I think over the years, what I would be proud of is the teams that I've been a part of. They're really together. They commit for the good of the team. I'd say that they have some selfless traits. They share the ball, they make the extra pass. I would say that they're committed. They have a focused game plan, and that's built around, predicated around the defensive end, and taking pride in being a resilient, tough, disciplined defensive basketball team that finishes possessions, and then offensively, kind of have a framework for guys to play within, and hopefully, get the ball where we have some advantages, and share the ball. I would say that's been kind of the staples of teams that I've been a part of. And I remember talking with somebody a while ago, and somebody asked me a similar question, and it made me reflect and go, it sounds simple, and I'm sure different coaches, but the challenge of that and the art of that is bringing it to life on the basketball floor, isn't it? And getting teams to commit to that, to buy into that, to what does selfless basketball look like? What does an extra pass look like? What does a good shot look like versus a great shot? And nowadays analytics underpins so much of our game, but there still has to be there's a little bit of opinion. It's a bit subjective at times, isn't it, with players and decision making and coaches and stuff. But yeah, I think in terms of the question, I'd say that they're probably traits associated with teams that I've been a part of.
Excellent. Well, look, I'm going to skip a question because you talked about kind of analytics being kind of part of the, I guess, modern game of basketball, and it's something that, if you really want to compete and you want to win, you've got to embrace. I don't think you can ignore that's part of our game. But do you feel like this whole kind of space and pace style of basketball? Do you think it's a new style of basketball? Is it something that you've embraced? Is it something that you think's always been here?
It's made me reflect. It's made me reflect massively. There's so much of it now as well. It's just even like throughout this period. Maybe if I'm just doing kind of some basic tasks and stuff. I might have a podcast on, and the Bill Simmons, the Book of Basketball podcasts, the 2.0 version. It's been great, and they always talk that they go back and they do all these rewatchables where they look at previous games, and the biggest thing they talk about is spacing. Like Lakers teams with Shaq and Kobe throwing the ball into Shaq, and literally 5 defenders stood within the paint, and then it just makes you reflect. And I know when I started coaching, I did what I knew, so maybe that was my experience from previous coaches or some of the CPD and stuff. And I remember I had a guy called Jack Thompson, who was a GB under 20, Milton Keynes Lion. He came up through Nigel Lloyd and Michael New. They were his kind of coaches, and he came to us at Northumbria for a 4-year undergrad. And skilled player, the most unconscious shooter that I think I've coached. And I spoke to him at the start of the week. To be fair, could not play a lick of defense to save his life. Like I am talking, CJ couldn't guard my nan, CJ, and I hope he's listening. And I grilled him for 4 years, and throughout that period, he absolutely won us basketball games. We played we played a team at home, and he was getting killed. He wasn't hitting a shot, and I remember it was the start at the end of the third, going into the fourth, and he was 0 of 5 from the 3-point line. And I sent either, I can't remember, it was Tom Devitt or Lewis Champion. I sent one of those two guys in. I think it must have been Tom Devitt, because I don't think Lou Champ played him, so I think it was Tom Devitt. I must have sent him in to the subs table, and JT hit one, and I kind of looked at Tom, and he looked at me, and he's like, because he just had this ability just to honestly go unconscious. And so I looked, and this is what I love about like that selflessness, and this comes over time. And Tommy just looked at me, and he's like, should we give him 30 seconds? And I was like, yeah. So Tommy just kind of got up and came and sat back on the bench, and JT was like in the fourth, I think he was 8 for 8 or 7 for 7. Mate, he was just now, again, that's like a subjective thing at that moment, but he had the ability to do that. And then people talk about pace and space, spreading the floor, positionless basketball, more threes. If you've got the personnel to do that, without a doubt, that's the way that the game's going. Even before this call, I was on some stuff with the performance analyst for GB, Adam Sewell, who's based down in Solent, and he's just put together an incredible amount of analytical data based on our last GB window. So, 3 o'clock today, he's talking me through all of that, and it kind of underpins like the eye test when you. So, it is interesting, mate. Basketball has changed massively, and it is something that I think coaches have to adapt to. I guess a lot of it again is circumstance, resource. If you've got somebody, in the States, these college programs who are able to look at it and stuff. So, but yeah, it does fascinate me, and I think it's making me ask more questions about my practice.
Well, look, I know I've got a player that at times this year could just literally go off on one, and then at other times could be kind of ice cold. They are the most amazing players to watch when they're on it, and they're the most kind of frustrating players to watch when it's not their day. But Chrissy Karpova, big shout out to you, great shooter in our program. She'll be listening to you now, saying, "See, you should have left me on. You should have left me on just a little bit longer."
Yeah. No,
So
that's not the message. The message was there wouldn't have been a question if JT could play defense, and
right,
that's where we always had this battle. But it kind of it got to the point, and these are, you talk about coaching, like, so our group that year would hold each other accountable defensively. We were a really good defensive team, and it got to the point where I would have to challenge JT, and his teammates would do, but it was kind of like the unwritten rule where he did apply himself. He did, but he was a terrible defender. Like, that's just not his skill set. Like, but like, just because he's a terrible defender doesn't mean that we have to let him get away with it. But it was kind of unwritten where I would say it, and he'd give us a bit of a head nod and be like, "Yeah, I've got you. My job is to space the floor down." It's like he doesn't get a pass. He doesn't, and that's maybe some
yeah,
things that I've learned more about. As you the management side of players, and how they fit within the team philosophy, and understanding that, okay, even if that's his role, can teammates accept that, or her teammates accept that. It's
Yeah.
fascinating, mate, isn't it? It is, yeah.
Well, it's an ongoing challenge, isn't it? And I think the thing I will take about from that is about skill sets, and it's about the players and the personnel that you have, which will dictate what kind of basketball you can play, whether you can play positionless basketball or not. But it's also about accountability, and how do you create that kind of ethos and that environment of accountability within your teams. Now, you mentioned a little bit about, you've already spoken at least two or three times about, doing your work as a coach, doing your homework, doing your research, looking at video, looking at tape, listening to people. I wanted to ask, because I'm a big reader. I love reading books, and there's a really kind of, I guess it's a really popular book, The Seven Habits of Successful or Effective People. And one of the tenets in that book is about sharpening your sword. So, as a coach, we're always trying to hold our players to account. Are you going away and doing the work? What are you doing in the off season? Are you getting your shots up? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting enough sleep, eating the right foods? As a coach, how do you sharpen your sword during the season and in the off season?
Yeah, I think that's where they're all linked, because the accountability thing, as a coach, the when we went from Division 2 to Division 1, I found it easier because the level improved, and therefore scouting improved, and therefore specific game plans improved, which you were going into games. And we were prepared. We had specific game plans, and I would say the majority of the time I got them, right. Sometimes maybe I didn't get the game plan right, and the players maybe hold me to account. In terms of I guess, my development and how you do that in season, it is tough. I talk a lot about kind of, being out on an island, like being in a silo. I think a lot of us as coaches, like, we are, and I got my last couple of years Northumbria. Get into the habit of practice nights on the drive home. And I know it's strange, but you'd ring other coaches who were going through the same thing. So, I'd be on the phone to Matt Shaw at Derby. I'd be on the phone to Chris Mellor at Bradford. More so Matt Shaw, because Mellor just chewed me ear off for hours and get into midnight, and I'm still trying to get me beauty sleep in.
I know
Um,
him well.
but yeah, I tell you what, honestly, I mean, I've said it a couple of times. I was doing a podcast the other day, and I've alluded to it a couple of times already, because I think you learn a lot from failure. From people talk about success, whatever, but you learn a lot from the failure. And the year that I was struggling as a young coach, he just went out of his way and put himself out there, and kind of, was a sounding board for me on the stuff we were going through. But so I think, in the season, it's maybe a lot on, you're always being reflective, and you're looking kind of internally at what you're doing, what your team are doing, and how you can, was the interaction that you had with the player, was that the right time? Was it an arm round the moment? Was it a I'm chewing you out moment? Was it a ignore it and have some selective here? And then, tactically, is that the right thing to do? And so in the season, a lot of it for me is about that reflective practice in every moment. And I get relentless with it, to the point where probably I reflect too much, and maybe sometimes to my detriment. And I've thought that in the past, where sometimes it's just about sticking with it and going with it. Out of season, sharing with coaches, clinics. I think throughout this period, the boom in online clinics is just unbelievable. And I was talking with a lecturing colleague at Northumbria yesterday, who is he does a lot of stuff in rugby, but honestly, he's a guru. Like, he's an absolute guru. And every time I talk with him, I feel like I develop, like, my knowledge. And he and I were talking, and I just said, I've had to, like, strip back on them, because there's that many. How can you impart them into your practice? And people talk about mastery. You've got to be able to get on the floor and implement it and stuff. So I think now it's great, by the way, this open attitude to sharing. I'm not challenging that. It's awesome, but I think you've got to figure out what's relevant for you, and you've maybe got little bit be selective on clinics and stuff. But I think there's different things. Like, I just, in the last GB window, I worked with Andreas, who I was able to share and learn from. Previous windows worked with Lloyd Gardner, and so I think for me the biggest part is being able to talk basketball with basketball people, and sometimes sometimes the questions they ask you, it just reaffirms something you believe in, or it makes you think, actually I'll try and maybe modify something that I do.
Excellent. Well, look. I kind of I was thinking back to when we first met, and over the years that I've known you, and I wonder at what point, once you'd started your coaching journey, did you ever foresee yourself becoming um, the coach, the head coach of the senior men's program?
No.
So, so,
uh,
so how did we get there? Because I've been on a basketball court with you. I've shared beers with you. I don't remember us ever talking about those kind of jobs, and not that not that we ever didn't question whether you were capable, but yeah, I just don't know when did that trajectory kind of take off?
yeah, it's circumstance plays a factor in everything. People talk about right time, right place. There's definitely a part of that. Um, and CJ, this is not with you. I mean that because like a lot of I'm fully aware that when the interim thing happened in February, there was a lot of people that asked a lot of questions, and I was speaking with Marc Woods, and he rightly so, he asked those questions. The circumstance plays a part in it, but I also have worked my arse off, and I'm proud of my journey, and I would challenge anybody on that, and I'm confident that I can add value when I'm in that environment, and I'm proud of that. I'm still learning. I'm still I learned through that window. I learned after it, but I'm also confident that the things that I think I take pride in. I like to say that they were present in that window. How did that happen? I guess timing. I was with the national team, the under 20s in 2013. I wanted to be back with them in 2014. At the time, some of the decision makers said that they wanted to change things up, and I was a little bit frustrated at that decision, because I felt like I'd been on a journey there, and I'd committed to it. I'd had to move a lot of things around in my personal life to kind of commit to that. I felt like me, James Veer, and Doug Leishner had a good relationship, and I felt like I'd been a part of it that had got out of Division B, and I wanted to be a part of it in Division A. So I kind of stepped back from it, and the people who were involved in the national team then very much were explicit about having a mindset: if you're out, you're out, and you're not coming back in. And Whereas when Mark Clark was a director of the national team, he was very much, he wanted a bank of coaches to commit, and be able to say, listen, you commit this all year, you commit in the summer, you might do 3 summers and then take a summer off because you need to, because birth of a child, whatever it may be, these things. And so the under 20s position, Andreas Lloyd and Josh were part of the 20s. Andreas did an incredible job helping them get promoted. That I think they beat Russia in the third place game in Division B the previous year. He stepped down. Lloyd Gardner was a part of the seniors as well, so he wanted to stay as an assistant with the 20s because he was assisting the seniors. And Josh was an assistant too. And I'd had a couple of decent years at Northumbria, and I applied for the position and got it, and I was chuffed with that because I felt that like the door was closed on the national team for me, and I'm patriotic, mate. I love representing my country. I'm emotional, and the guys know that, and guys take the mick out of me a little bit, but like I am, I love representing my country, and I thought that the team had decent under 20s. Again, I learned a lot from it, and I think that maybe implementing that for another year would have been great. But by circumstance, one of the assistants on the seniors wasn't able to be there at the window. They asked me. I was maybe the natural person because I was the under 20s head coach previously, so they asked me to come and be involved, and then I've just kind of stayed around, and they can't get rid of me after that. So, and then maybe the situation with Nate, he obviously wasn't available to be the window, so it was just kind of, they asked me would I do it on an interim basis, and I wanted to talk with a couple of the players first, a couple of the senior guys, and they said, we're with you, and we'll make sure that we reinforce what it takes. These guys are pros; they've been around long enough. They know kind of what to do. So, but yeah, it was an incredible moment.
Fantastic, and congratulations. We don't often. I probably did send you a congratulations on social media, but there'll be thousands. You'll still be scrolling through, and I know you'll be committing to responding to every single one of those people that's thanked you, but that might take you a little while.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not much of a social media guy. I've got a Twitter, and I like being on Twitter for sharing stuff. But yeah, I'm not much of a social media guy.
It's all good. It's all good. So, given those years, and I think it's really useful for people to understand that it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't really just about being in the right place at the right time. And obviously, in every opportunity in life, that does play a little part. You've got to be in it to win it. But equally, people probably don't know the journey that you've taken and the work that you've put in and the commitment and the sacrifice that is required to continue coaching basketball pretty much at any level in the UK, but particularly if you want to be, working at, Division 1, excuse me, if you want to work in national teams, if you're on that kind of performance pathway, it's incredibly difficult to make that sacrifice year in, year out. Given that, as far as I'm aware, the money still isn't amazing, kind of at any level in the UK. So, absolute kudos to you and respect to you for kind of just sticking it out and still being there. Um, given the opportunity that you just created for yourself, and that you did a great job at the Europeans recently. What made you take, and this isn't a slight to Teesside, because I don't want anybody to think that that's not a great job, but I think there'll be a lot of people looking at that opportunity and saying, well, Marc could have gone to Europe, or he could be in the BBL right now, and isn't that what we want from our kind of senior men's coach? But you've taken a decision to join Teesside, a growing club, an exciting opportunity. Tell me what went into making that decision.
Um, yeah, I want to be coaching at the highest level I can. I like being in the country. I like being in England, and that's the BBL. Um, and the opportunities haven't been right. They've been limited, very limited as well, by the way. And obviously Newcastle is my hometown club. It's the city that I live in, and um, when Fab left, and they promoted Ian, who obviously worked hard, and he's been part of the club for a long time. So yeah, there's no decision there for me because I haven't had an opportunity. So that kind of made me, that was a goal of mine for sure, and I'm not, I think it's okay to say that, like and I haven't achieved that goal. And credit, I've been part of the Eagles organisation for 15 years. So that they don't have to justify any decision that they make, and like I say, Ian's been a part of that program for a long time. So credit to credit to Paul and Ian, and they'll crack on with things. So my son is based in Newcastle. Yeah, I need I guess an opportunity at this moment in time where I'm able to be a part of it. And James Thompson, who's the owner, and the chairman, and Martin Anderson, who's the commercial director. They've outlined their plans. They're very ambitious. They are very ambitious, and they're banging the drum about that. And my I have ambition personally to be in the BBL. My viewpoint on it was, and I've said this to them, and I'm like you, I'm not being disrespectful to anybody. I don't want to be coaching in Division 3. I absolutely don't. And that's I want to be coaching at the highest level that I can. And if I was in Division 1, I want to be in the BBL. That's the reality of where I want to be, and that's not. I'm not being disrespectful to anybody. I'm absolutely not. I had to ask myself whether I had the energy and the focus to do it, but I do think the time's right. And James and Martin have been a big part in that, in what they've outlined, and I know they're banging the drum. They've, like you say, they're an ambitious club. They've got, they've got a good infrastructure at the minute. They're not happy with where they want to be with the off court stuff, and that they're still looking at how they can grow that. And I think they've done an awful lot in a short space of time. The biggest word for me was sustainable. That's the big word that they keep talking to me about, and they're going to look to make that jump when it's right. And I thought, the opportunity presented itself now, and to get a part of the journey and get the on court stuff right. I think there'll be parts that frustrate me. I think there'll be parts I really enjoy. I think to be part of that journey with those guys now, and hopefully see that through as high as we can, I think is the reason why ultimately, I've been out the National League for a few years. So that's been kind of the main reason behind it.
Excellent. Well, look, I applaud you. I think, in the end, you've got to make decisions that you've got to make decisions that are right for you, and that allow you to kind of express your passion, your ambition. Clearly, that hasn't changed. And I wish you every success there, and I wish Teesside every success until, of course, they come against us, and then that'll be a slightly different a different proposition. But Marc, look, it's really been great touching base with you. It's been way too long, but I look forward to seeing you on the sidelines again in Division 1, however long it takes you to get there, and then hopefully in the BBL after that as well.
Thanks, CJ. Appreciate it. Yeah, and good to see you, and keep up the good work and stuff. And regards to everyone down there, that very fond memories of my time in Southampton. So really anything you need. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate everything, and love and regards to everybody, and take care.
Thanks so much, Marc. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Every week we do a catch-up version of the show, so that will be coming out in the next few days. Have a good night. Stay safe, everyone. Whatever the government says, this thing isn't over. Let's keep being strict with ourselves and respect everyone around us. All right, guys. Bye.